In this episode, I'm talking with Dominik Matyka, entrepreneur, investor, professor, and chief advisor of the DMEXCO. We discussed what makes conferences and trade fairs relevant platforms for marketing and business success and how to make the most out of them in 2023 and beyond. If you want to learn more about how to create an engaging booth or make the most out of your DMEXCO attendance, this episode is for you.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by ImpSide, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, ImpSide is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.
Hi, Dominik. It's a pleasure to have you here. How are you and what keeps you busy these days?
Hi, Marcus. Actually, I'm superb, to be honest. I'm feeling very well. There is a billion of things that actually keep me busy, but the busyness in my professional life actually makes me happy as well, which is a little bit contradictory, but I'm well. Children are healthy, wife is almost healthy. We're having a birthday party on the weekend. Weather's awesome, sun is shining, so appreciating the little things in life.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And that's how I know you, being always busy, having multiple ideas floating around. And yeah, is it a kid's birthday on the weekend? Those are particularly
No,
hard.
it's actually my wife's birthday. I've
Okay.
been told that you shouldn't mention women's ages. But
No, we don't talk about that. But
I've been told
it's
by
all-
the one that flipping numbers actually when turning 40 is a great thing. So 41 is the new 14, 42 is the new 24 and stuff like that. So not gonna tell you her real age.
No. But enjoy the party. Sounds like a good setting on the weekend. On your professional life, we have something coming up in September, and we actually waited with this recording of a podcast until it is released. The DMEXCO is coming up in September this year in Cologne, as always. What is the topic or the motto of this year?
The motto is empowering digital creativity, right? So digital creativity means using data to basically inform, inspire creative decisions, such as in the field of marketing, of course, but also in advertising and product design. And it sort of involves combining, insights gained from data analysis, which is huge these days, especially with Gen AI. But it also involves, combining those insights and combining them with creative thinking in general to be able to create new and effective ways on how to engage with audiences, on how to communicate ideas, how to solve problems, right? So it's on the one hand side, it's data, from a variety of sources, customer behavior, market trends, social media metrics, it's pattern identification, it's insights that basically can inform you about new creative strategies. And we believe that digital creativity is becoming increasingly important, especially in today's digital landscape, so we kind of put the focus to empower people, to, get real life examples out of that. So they basically get back a little bit of authority or power, to make usage of data in terms of creativity. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. We had a couple of conversations in that podcast this year about artificial intelligence, about data, and that like the worth of data, like what's it worth, or the worth of content. If you have everything available for cheap money and every information is available with just a few clicks and you can collect data, you can put it together, what's this making the difference for success or even for quality? And that is always like the creative spark you put as a human in, where our rare data or AI driven content is just not powerful enough. It's cheaply available, but you need creativity to really push it forward. So that's an awesome topic for this year, I think. Before we dive more into this year's DMEXCO, I'm particularly interested in how to get the most of that trade fair in September. But before we dive more into that, I would like to play a game with you called Two Truths, One Lie. We always do that to give our audience a little bit more insight in who you are as a person. So, have you prepared 3 little facts for me?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. Let's put it this way. I'm just trying to be, as natural as possible, so you don't kind of get to know which ones is truth and which one is a lie.
Yeah.
But,
I'm very bad at the game, so don't feel pressured here.
Yeah. So should I just run my 3 Dominik facts? Okay.
Yeah.
So first one would be that I've sold my first company at the age of 30. And sort of as a reward to myself for being successful in that particular path, or on that particular path of building, selling, growing companies, I always go to a hairdresser. And ever since, I've kept this ritual. So if I'm successful, I get a new haircut. So every time you see me in the future, you should always pay attention to the length of my hair, and then you'll basically know how it looks on my success path. Right. And I've been told actually ice hockey players do that with their beards in the playoffs as well. That would be the first truth. The second truth would be back in the days, I was on a plane to the East Coast with my good old friend Ruben Dresselhout. And we had this idea of a joint early stage fund that was basically missing in the market when we met in 2016 and no 15 and discussed that idea. And we actually agreed on many things in that, but we were discussing what the brand name of the fund should be, right? And in the airplane, there was this movie running, Rio Grande, with John Wayne. I don't know if you know it, but it's a very famous movie and was on the screens in front of us. And that's how the name Cavalry Ventures actually came to birth. And the last truth is, as some of you guys know, some probably don't, fitness and sports were always very important to me to sort of balance my mental work. So I practice a lot of sports also outside in the summer. But I'm now relocated from Berlin to the Taunus region. Both regions are actually quite dark and ugly in winter times. So I prefer to do sports indoors. And in the basement of my house, I've built a gym, and I think it's pretty cool. And I gave it a name. It's called Tiger Cage, because my wife actually calls me Tiger ever since I know her. Don't ask me why. I have no idea on the origin of her doing that. But yeah, that's the true facts. I think we're gonna.
Yeah, they're very good. I mean, in preparation of this podcast, I followed you extensively, especially on LinkedIn, which is a recommendation on anybody hearing that right now or seeing that on YouTube. Dominik is also very active on LinkedIn, posting on various different topics, also DMEXCO related. And if you want to prepare a little bit for it, go to LinkedIn and follow him. It's really worth it. So I have some ideas, but they are all seem pretty valid at this point. Let's see if by the end of the episode I have some ideas, which is as I told, I'm very, very bad at it. So usually you have a high chance of me missing your lie. Okay, thank you very much. So what I would be interested in before going on DMEXCO and what how exhibitors or attendees can make the most out of it and have a successful experience there, I would like to hear a little bit of your story, how you became the person you are today. I mean, the tiger cage maybe had some influence, but no, just kidding. But I mean, you are, people have to know, you are chief advisor for DMEXCO. Maybe you can explain what you're doing as a chief advisor, because that role is, for example, for me, not very known. But also you have founded a couple of companies. One we met in called Plister, which you sold, and have a lot in your life happening. So what were the most important steps in your career to become who you are today?
Wow, that's a good question, and it's like, I don't want to summarize my CV, but I'd say, taking a look back at my life, I would say there's like next to my academic studies, there was like three basic buckets in life, right? So I do see myself, well, I am a serial entrepreneur, an advisor, an investor. I do found, I do try to scale, of course, and then exit different companies in different areas. I sit on many advisory boards of technology companies, smaller ones, bigger ones. I do run a venture capital fund, uh, 60, 70 investments in that. So there's a lot of things I do, but when you nail it down to how the whole story started, I'd say it was when I finished my university back in 2005, where I've started, or I would summarize this period of like building and running companies, right? So in this period, I was primarily focused on building and scaling my own companies. Of course, one of the key focus was Plister, that I then sold in a very structured process in 2013 or end of 2012 to WPP, right? Next to that, I was forced by my parents, sort of positively speaking, to do a PhD, which eventually turned out to be very important for some other steps in my professional life. So after like 2014, the next 5 or so years were about, building funds and taking on selected advisories. So I've exited most of my companies. I had founded a couple of ones, and then I've redirected sort of my focus to wealth management, to investment. So I was selectively advising startups, such as Intermate Group, that we then eventually led to a very successful exit. And I was also still advising private equity funds, which then asked me to become a board member, which I then become for various portfolio companies. And opportunistically, I also become a co-founder, a founding investor to a company, aside of that, bringing in knowledge, network, scale, commercialization, business development, experience, and stuff like that. And in between this period of those 5 years, I think it must be around 2018 until today, you can say, I'm more or less, trying to leverage my network to provide advisory and professorship to the people I know or hopefully get to know. So in 2017, I took over DMEXCO as their chief advisor, to be frankly honest, in very difficult times. So I was very much primarily focused on, I don't want to say restructuring or change management, but it was a very full-time role for almost 2 years, where we had to, reposition DMEXCO quite heavily. And 2020, a good old friend of mine, or a long-term friend of mine, called me up and said, "Hey, listen, I'm about to, I've just founded a university, Fachhochschule, University of Applied Science. And I do remember you have a PhD, right?" I was like, "Yes. So would you like to become a professor?" And I was like, "No, not my cup of tea." But he kept pushing me and, we conjointly tried to elaborate what the advantages were, especially for giving back a little bit, knowledge, experience making, preparing the new generation, for the future jobs in a more profound, more pragmatic, more practical, more experience-driven way. And this is why I took over a professorship in Potsdamer's Wealth, which, occupies me like a day, a week. Aside of that, I was offered multiple advisory seats in companies where I'm basically leveraging my network, leveraging my expertise, and trying to grow the companies. I wouldn't say on the sideline, but of course not in the most active position. And next to that, I'm running tons of different other projects, which I'd like to call them. I'm a very idea-driven person. So every time I have an idea, no matter to what extent, I'm just like trying to solve it. So problem, idea validation and problem solving. It's one of my, I'd say, passions. Does it
Thank you
answer
for
your
that.
question, or should I?
No, thank you for that explanation. I think I followed when you have been announced as chief advisor for the DMEXCO 2017. Yeah,
So,
you said, I think it was, we were
yeah,
actually exhibitors
yeah.
in that
No,
startup valley by the
yeah.
BVDW with our little startup back then, and it was announced like Dominik Matyka is becoming chief advisor, and that was a great move. It was like, okay, that announcement is big. There's some change to come here, and I only knew you as a businessman, as a CEO back then, but what you tell about networking and knowledge sharing
Mm.
um, to us right now is basically for me the essence of what you're doing at the chief advisor of the DMEXCO. I mean, all in business is about building a network, sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, seeing connections to other companies or players in the market,
Yeah.
and going forward, being successful together, right? So
Well, it sounds so easy, right? And I'd say
it sounds easy if you say it.
uh,
Like,
the essence of many things is probably not the network, but the fruitful outcome of the connection that you've made. So it's more about the why do you network. It's not about the networking per se, right? So the golden circle is structured a little bit differently, if you like to say so. But in the end of the day, it's my role within the DMEXCO as chief advisor is not necessarily just about networking. It's a lot about corporate strategic business development, long-term strategy formulations, especially in the context that I'm advising them only. So I'm not in the operating driver's seat. There's a couple of restrictions we can't overcome, but I'd say I'm like a cross-functional sparring partner, for the Congress board, advising them on digital strategies. And I did that also throughout the organization, right? So it's sort of a leadership position on a sideline, right? So you're trying to give your experience when it came to repositioning the brand, communication strategy, setting new agendas, but it was also about process optimization when we started to implement new crucial technologies, our CRM, PMs, data strategy, stuff like that, and we did also digitalize the event, as you know, because we unfortunately, like all of us, run into Corona. So we had to, conceptualize, implement, and roll out a digital platform that we've developed from scratch. Right. So that was basically those operative steps. And now it's a lot about, establishing global partnerships with brands, with other events, with other key core partners such as V3, W3, which is one of our newer partners in that process. It's also providing access, to on the one hand side, to my extensive network, C-level speakers, exhibitors, representing the DMEXCO in media, in PR. The German word could also be Impulsgeber, which is a very fruitful job. But on the other hand, as a CEO of a company, like, or a managing director or a founder, you're always also in the position where you need to take responsibility on the executions that you made. Whereas being a advisor or a board member, you just try to be a great sparring partner. So you always try to, provide insights and experiences that you've gained, but you can't force somebody to do something, right? So it's sort of also a very communicative, diplomatic kind of position as well.
I can imagine that's a great or a big challenge, especially when you're used to like just pull a decision, take responsibility for it, nevertheless the outcome. But you're not in a position like that. I understand it now. What would you say was your biggest challenge from 2017 on? Maybe excluding COVID, because that challengingly is one of the biggest challenge you had to overcome as conference, but like in navigating the DMEXCO as digital or as digital marketing exposition, and I think the biggest digital marketing exposition in Europe, into where it is today and transforming it or making it ready for the future.
There's many things. And I think staying agile, listening to your customers, to trends, evolving as a big, huge ship, with limited resources like everyone. That's far through everything I do, always the biggest challenge. But DMEXCO is not what it is because, or DMEXCO is what it is because we've always strived to make it a relevant event, a relevant business event. So when people ask me, is it the biggest one? What is big in terms of what KPI? In terms of attendees, in terms of partners? How do you define a partner? Is the food stand a partner? No, it's not. For us, it's really exhibitors, so people that showcase their own solutions, services, technologies. And I always like to say, if you want to make your business successful, you basically come to Cologne in September, right? Because we do see ourselves as the central place in Europe for all important decision makers, from the digital economy, from the digital marketing economy. And size, it's not always about the size of the boat, right? If you can't steer it, then it will sink, right? Or putting it in an event context, it won't provide the necessary output or ROI to your customers, right? So there would probably, this is what I see as my biggest challenge, trying to make sure to understand what people are looking for. And events, they've changed a lot over the last years. There was a huge trend on in-housing events, huge corporates. There was a huge trend on festivals. There was a huge trend on smaller niche events, et cetera, et cetera. So all kind of events that they were have changed, but what remained, always the most profound and long-term, strategy for most companies is just to, attend events that provide an ROI, especially in, recession-driven times like we are these days. So you need to, Mark Zuckerberg is always speaking about profitable growth, or the year of efficiency, or the decade of efficiency. And what does efficiency mean? Efficiency means that you just participate, in marketing activities such as an event, if you believe that this event, provides value out for you. And this is what we're basically trying to do, creating a marketplace where we also want our attendees and our participants, find out about most of the newest digital trends, get to know new platforms, new business models, new players, so it's all about sort of that bucket.
And I think you, the whole team of the DMEXCO did great in keeping that core of a brand strong, like having a marketplace, having an event where business focus and decision makers, or like people that at least have an influence on decision makers, have a really strong event to go to, attend, to connect with. We have seen, I share that what you told us, like we have seen a lot of events coming up, becoming bigger, louder, more to the masses, where it's a totally personal opinion, and I like these events also, but for entertaining purpose. And I see a lot of conversations on social media where people complain that certain events are too full, too loud, and don't provide actually the value that was promised. And I think the DMEXCO always had that brand where business is on the purpose, is like in the core and on the foreground, but you also have fun. Like it's also a very fun event where you have good conversations and good parties at the end of the day, and have both of the best of both worlds, having a good business event.
People just need to understand that there is no one platform, one company, one app, one everything fits all, right? And especially when it comes to events, there's so many personas or sub audiences with different needs that we of course would love to fulfill everyone, right? And I do take the comments and feedback, on age structures, on experience level, on orientation, on content quality, on whatsoever very seriously, because the companies evolve as well, right? So you can't just place something in the market and just like continue with that offering forever, So we do measure a lot. So just to give you, an idea, as compared to last year, we had 100%, almost 100% of pre-bookings, early bird applications, more than in 2020, right? We now are already hitting hundreds of exhibitors that signed up, right? We do have companies that where it took us eventually, like, ever since I took over, to get them back on the floor, right? So it's a process, right? It's a process of listening. It's a process of, providing also new products towards them, right? And it's not as easy as it sounds. So I do wish all event organizers the best of luck. There is room for so many more. You just need to know what your expectation management is, right? So I'm not going to South by Southwest to do business, for instance, right? I'm going to Cannes Lions not to meet French people, not to meet US people, right? Stuff like that. It's each event has its, existence or allowance, and you just need to know that and manage your expectations around that.
Very generic question, but what can exhibitors do to get the most out of this year's DMEXCO if they have a booth and are attending? Like, what expectations should they had on maybe generating leads or building connections or engagement on the booth or talks, social media activities, whatever? What's some general tips if you are exhibiting maybe the first time?
Or if you're exhibiting the first time, I would say having a booth is crucial, but preparation is key, right? So the most important in all events, I don't want to be too black-white, but I would say the majority of companies that attend events, need to make sure that they do prepare for that event. They just don't come, have their booth, place their people on that, and wait for people passing by. Of course, there's also people passing by and serendipity, like you'll have a discussion or a connection made that eventually turns out to be very, successful or return orientated. But I do believe, and that's my experience from, many years of exhibiting myself or having dozens of companies where I'm invested in exhibiting. If you prepare accordingly, then your ROI will boost. And we do, for that reason, also have an app, if you like to say so, mobile app and a web app, where all ticket holders, all attendees are being incrementally, onboarded into that. Each company, they run their own CRMs, they run their own campaigns. So inviting people on talks is crucial. Then I'm a huge fan of, master classes. We do also run hundreds, so being able to inform yourself about a topic of general interest and then deep diving into a conversation with those people that were running the master class is also a very great opportunity to start, a business conversation. And aside of that, I think those times, the bigger the booth, the bigger the lounge coffee area, those times are over. And I'm actually quite happy that they are over, because it's not about, showcasing how big your booth is. It's not about, trying to grab attention by booth size. It's trying to grab attention by relevance, and relevance you just get if you have a great user or customer-centric business, that positions itself well in a competitive landscape and provides USPs towards your customers as compared to others. And it's also good that we don't, exaggerate on big booths anymore, because it's not CO2, conform, I'd say, right? So the more efficient, the booth goes, the better it is. On the contrary, People like, big booths. People like shiny, glossy, lightning kind of, you know, booths, if you like to say so. So I do always, confront people and customers and tell them, hey, why don't you try to combine both worlds and try to create an experience, ideally an experience that, transports your values, your mission, your service offering, So just to give you a very easy example, so Mobile.de, right, which is marketplace for used cars, they had a scooter park built last year at DMEXCO, which was an experience, but people instantly related, that experience to Mobile.de or vice versa, right? So it was kind of cool to see that how companies think and try to, bring relevancy through experiences onto the floor, right? When it comes to content, I'm a huge fan of not overselling, because if you sell too heavily, people probably might not, trust you or like it. So bringing in clients to make them telling how great you are is definitely a great way on how it works. And aside of that, just pinging me, explaining me your needs. Is it more, are you a new brand coming into the market? Do you have a new product that you launched? Have you conducted a study with relevant insights for the industry? Do you have a new CEO that gets to know, agencies, brands, and other players in the market? What is your true, ultimate goal? And being a little bit more concrete that I want to make money. I want to have business meetings. What kind of business meetings? What should be the outputs? Those times where people meet and buy something on the ground are over. Probably they've never been there, to be frankly honest, So it's a step where you intensivize the relationship with the people that you're meeting, right? It's one step in your sales funnel, a very personal and intense one. That's why personal events and personal connections are so highly valued, because if you meet somebody in a real life context, then you see, is he looking in my eyes? Is he sweating? Is he nervous? Is he in a good shape, in a good mood? How is the interpersonal tension between those two parties, which is very hard to figure out on the internet or through a video. And that's the huge advantage of events. Yeah.
Very extensive answer on the question of how exhibitors can make the most out of the DMEXCO this year, or in general attending events and trade fairs and exhibitions. I was exhibitor a couple of times in my life, and with various companies I worked in, and I absolutely share your point of view, especially in preparing the event and making meetings beforehand, or reaching out to people that you find interesting, and think beforehand, what is the shared topic we have, like not writing them in the dating app events are offering, hey, I want to sell you something, but think of how can I approach that person in a way that it provides value to that person. So sharing some insight that I have in business and I think that it's valuable for them. Might it be a survey, might it be a case study I have, might it be a client I want to introduce, or something like that. You always have to think of what is the value that I can provide to other people. And especially working in a 100% remote company, in a very remote industry, I also definitely share your opinion on meeting in person is incredibly valuable. And just see and build a connection and a relationship with people you maybe work together with remotely. Might it be clients, might it be colleagues, might it be competitors even. Meeting the people and build a personal relationship is something we cannot exchange through digital tools, and personal events will always have a reason for that. I also like big booths. I cannot lie on that. Like I see, like I really like what you're saying, like creating an experience which people will not forget, like the mobile example you told. It definitely shows also the market position a company has. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
everybody can write on the website, we are market leading in XYZ.
that's
That's
the main
easy.
reason. Yeah,
We
yeah.
are revolutionizing industry, blah blah blah. But showing it with a nice booth, bringing a lot of knowledgeable people in the booth, all the employees of the company, let them explain the products, the features, whatever you're building, and just create a good experience for people where your jaw drops. That's always what I'm interested in when I walk about through conferences. It's like, really, I go booth by booth, take photos. As a marketer, that's my thing, because I know someday I will have to do a booth again, and I will want to be prepared for that moment. So I'm really scanning who's doing what and who's going big, because that's just a nice thing if you can. But of course, sustainability is something you have to think of. But I think there are good
It's
ways to
the,
do it.
I do even see a analogy on a parallel to, the income gap discussions that we are having in on the other hand side, the rich become richer, the poor become poorer. And if you transport that to booths, I think it's we as DMEXCO, we're just a facilitator. So we just give you an experience with best networking, with relevant speakers, with important market developments. We try to provide you orientation, etc. Whatever you do on the ground is very much in the obligation of the partners. And I think it's a little bit unfair sometimes, because if you are already a big company with a lot of budget, you can present yourself, in a big way. And sometimes this little great, company with its great products and services, they just need to find ways, how to still, become successful, become seen. That's a pity thing, that those small companies actually sometimes, I mean, it's like a startup. And I've been told it's a very drastic metaphor. A startup usually comes with a knife to a shooting, and that's why they have to find out, they have to analyze the situation better. They have to be aware of, the audience, the framework, in a way that allows them, to transform this knife into a bayonet, right? Because they just can afford the knife, right? So I know in the context of the Ukraine war, which is awful, it's probably not the best analogy, but it kind of good and, very
It's a
visually.
term widely used. Like, bringing a knife to a gunfight is nothing to
So
worry
that
about.
pretty much explains, also the setup on big conferences or big trade shows.
Yeah.
There's like the market leaders, the top 5. Back in the days, the GAFAs, that are going huge, and there's the others that are going small. And if we manage by introducing new products or new experiences, if we manage to balance that out a little bit, it's good for everybody actually.
Yeah. And I think there are some offers. So if startup founders or marketing people are listening, there are definitely some programs you can research for the DMEXCO or others. Like, there is a Startup Valley, is it called? I think. There are also platforms for agencies where you don't have to compete or don't need that big budget, and have some substitution to make it possible
Make
to
it my
attend.
relative, So
Yeah.
it's even a there's conferences at trade shows in the world where they come up with pricing tags on on their expeditions, where I'm just like, wow, who is paying for that, right? But in the end of the day, it's not about the price tag, it's about the ROI that you get out of it, right? So what do you expect in terms of the amount of meetings, the quality of meetings, the amount of leads or touch points or awareness, post-event media, etc., etc. So ideally, you do have a framework for yourself, a little easy calculation where you can justify the amount of investment into any channel. And events are just like one channel. DMEXCO in its now 14th year has the advantage of being a platform where you have a higher probability of being successful due to its history and due to the fact that there are so many people that also add a sort of community. So it's sort of a homecoming for many people every year. And if you try to find somebody who's been going to the DMEXCO or exhibiting with us for many years, it's always a very good way to be shown around and to be introduced into this event setting.
You also talked about this year as year of recession, or you mentioned the recession we are currently in. What is your outlook on the broader digital marketing landscape?
In general, I mean.
Yeah, in general, as investor or as chief advisor of the DMEXCO, how things are going this year? Are companies still spending the budget to exhibit big, or is everything going a little bit smaller? Is there confidence in the market, in the business? Because, for example, I see a lot of recession talks in the media, but working in digital agencies, our books are pretty filled, and we all, of course, observe that conversation, but we're just not as feeling it as it is described in media oftentimes.
So I'm a little bit surprised or overwhelmed or biased, because on the one side, we do have this, almost never ending Ukraine war, which I, personally hope will end with a win for the Ukrainians very, very soon. We have, on the other hand side, we have inflation. We have the Fed and the ECB raising, their interest. We have a shortage on skilled workers still. Some people say AI might solve that problem a little bit. We do have faltering supply chains. There's a looming recession in the USA. There is mass layoffs, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have those, I'd say, rather difficult market conditions, that sort of make it necessary also, to be particularly carefully with investments made and focus on the ones that do generate ROI. On the other hand side, though all those, shit facts are not represented neither in the public markets. So my stocks, your stocks, probably everybody's stocks is going up. There's no true hits. The tech titles recovered in a way where when you take a look at Nvidia, it's like crazy. You could say completely overpriced on the one hand side, but then AI kind of compensates that. The bookings that we receive as DMEXCO are skyrocketing as well. The industry reports that you get to see are also great. The companies that I'm invested in, especially ones also in the marketing, media, tech field, are also doing phenomenally well. So it's a little bit bizarre because we should have been already hit way harder. Somebody explained it to me with one logical answer that might be one piece of a more holistic global answer. He said during COVID, people were just, saving money because they didn't have any possibility to spend it. No vacation, no restaurants, no nothing. Why to buy a new shirt when you're not going out, right? So this savings were now being used, despite we had an inflation, right? So it's an overspend from savings of the last 2 years that is now going to end, which evidently, from a logical perspective, when recession or when inflation doesn't go down, which means that consumption is going to get down. And we see consumption going down in a lot of areas already quite heavily, So it's a very binary view that I have, I'm very lucky that I'm not as much affected, by those negative macroeconomic factors. And I don't see actually to become affected, to be frankly honest, not as much as what I would have, seen an effect on my businesses, let's say 4 months ago. The first 4 months of this year to my feeling and my experience have been way more drastic than the last, let's say, 2-3 months.
Yeah, I can support that. I saw that. I think in May, doors opened for a lot of opportunities again, where it was a bit hesitant from January to April, where everybody was like observing how's the year going, and then suddenly in May, like globally, every company decided, okay, no, let's invest now because we want to have our projects happen by the end of the year, and now's the time. So I absolutely share that, and I talked with a lot of other agency owners or business people in our branch about that, and everybody was like, in May something changed. That's particularly interesting.
I mean, I'm more, I've always been and always going to be the more optimistic person.
Yeah. You have to be as entrepreneur, right?
Yes, you do have to be, but realistic optimism, I would say, it's the way to go. Mm-hmm. But acknowledging and accepting and maneuvering through a dynamic, environment is probably the strategy that most companies apply these days. Which also provides me, this, today I'm, telling you this is going to be happening, whereas tomorrow I might have a slightly distinct answer on something that was perceived, especially by me due to my personal experiences, differently yesterday. So there's a huge volatility, a huge dynamic movement in everything, in stock and feelings and company decisions. It takes a little longer, but I remain very positive, that digitalization is the key solution to many of our problems. I believe very much, obsessed by the fact that DMEXCO is one of the greatest platforms to provide, a piece of the puzzle as a solution to networking, to bringing people together, to matchmaking, to empowering people to do business. Might sound very simple, but it's not. So trying to live off the enthusiasm of the market and trying to significantly work on elaborating or not elaborating on increasing their ROIs. That's my job.
Awesome final statement for this episode. I learned a lot, and I hope every listener or viewer learned a lot. Thank you, Dominik, very much for highlighting what is happening on the DMEXCO this year, and also why it is still a relevant marketing activity to attend events in general, not particularly the DMEXCO, but in general, having in-person meetings and building that business relations and networks with other people and other companies is very, very crucial, and something which we will ever need. And I'm personally looking forward to attend in September. Maybe we can shake hands personally there.
I hope so, yeah.
Yes, maybe. But let's see if I can catch you on the floor. Before we end this episode, we still have to find out the lie you told me.
Sure. I've forgot about that.
Yeah, sure. That's always the case. So can you recap your three Dominik statements?
Yes. So the one was with my ritual. So I always get a haircut when I turn a business to become very successful, like an exit. Mm-hmm. The second one was the brand name Cavalry Ventures came to birth when my co-founder Reuven and me were in an airplane and watching Rio Grande with John Wayne. And the last is that I've named my basement gym in my house Tiger Cage.
So let me walk through that a bit. Your hairs are pretty long right now.
Yes.
So
I had 3 exits in the making, but then the repression hit, so I had to postpone them for.
Yeah. You have really fast growing hair. Then you're too successful for that hair length. But I know your investment fund is called Cavalry Ventures, so that makes also sense. The gym. It's I think your wife calls you Tiger. Who's calling it Tiger Gym? You, Tiger Cage, you or your wife? You're calling it Tiger Gym?
Well, I have a big
Tiger Cage.
advantage.
Yeah.
Tiger Cage.
Tiger Cage. That could all. I mean, honestly, it's hard. From what I know, I have to say honestly, because I'm one of your LinkedIn stalkers, I know you cut your hairs when you have a successful exit or a big success in your life, because you told that in an interview recently, and it was printed in, what magazine was it?
Capital, I think.
Capital. I get the John Wayne story also. Oh, wow. But you definitely have a Tiger Cage. You definitely have here. I would say the lie is John Wayne.
The lie?
Yeah, no, the lie is the Tiger Cage. I go for Tiger Cage. That's the
You
lie.
go for Tiger Cage?
Yeah.
Okay, I will do something very special to you.
Okay.
I hope that it's going to work. I'm not entirely sure, but let me stream. Fenster. Look at that. Ta-da!
So it takes a while to share. Wait a second. Okay. Yeah, I saw.
So, that's really my Tiger Cage. Yeah? I have a friend that runs a startup with those neon signatures.
Yeah.
And I was very happy that I was given some. So the lie was actually the Cavalry Ventures. The name wasn't found by neither Rufen nor me, but by our co-founders. In a way, I don't even know.
Maybe they have seen a John Wayne movie.
Yeah, maybe. We originally wanted to call it Voltage Ventures.
Yeah.
And we've decided then conjointly for Cavalry. Yeah, that was the lie.
Okay. See, I told you I'm bad at the game, so no worries to be nervous when telling me lies. I cannot spot them. I'm blind on that spot. Maybe if we would have met in person and I had more body language stuff going on. Thank you, Dominik, for being in the show. It was a real pleasure. As I said, I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to the DMEXCO in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus, for your time. Thanks.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by ImpSide, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, ImpSide is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.